My name is Elaine. I'm a 56-year-old doctor at our local hospital, a profession that has been both my calling and my refuge, especially since becoming a widow 2 decades ago. My life, outside of the hospital, revolves around my only son, Thomas, a 30-year-old who recently told me about his serious relationship with a girl named Clara. He described her in such glowing terms that I was both curious and eager to meet her. So, I invited them over for dinner. The day of their visit, I was a bundle of nerves. I wanted everything to be perfect. I prepared my signature dishes, a golden-baked chicken, sweet milk pudding, and a hearty salad with chicken eggs, amongst others. I hoped these familiar comforts would make Clara feel welcome. When they arrived, Clara was noticeably thin and somewhat pale, but I brushed off my initial concern, attributing it to nerves or perhaps a dietary choice I wasn't yet aware of. I greeted them warmly. "Welcome, Clara. It's so lovely to finally meet you," I said with a smile. "Thank you, Mrs. Elaine," Clara replied politely, though her voice was barely above a whisper. We settled in the living room for a bit before moving to the dining room. I could sense Thomas's excitement as he introduced Clara to my home. However, the atmosphere shifted drastically once we sat down for dinner. Clara's eyes widened in shock when she saw the baked chicken on the table. Her face contorted into a look of disgust as she exclaimed, "I can't believe you're serving this. I'm a hard vegetarian. I don't eat such things." Thomas turned beet red. "Mom, I'm so sorry, I should have told you about Clara's diet," he stammered. Clara cut in sharply, "Thomas, you're such a fool. How could you not mention something so important?" I was taken aback by her harsh words. It was uncomfortable to see Thomas being scolded like that. Quickly trying to remedy the situation, I offered, "Clara, I'm sorry about the misunderstanding. Perhaps you'd like to try some of the other dishes? Do they have any animal products? Eggs? Milk?" Clara interrogated, her tone accusatory. "Yes, they do," I replied, feeling a growing sense of unease. She slammed her hand on the table, pushing away the dishes. "I can't even stand the sight of them." Clara stood up abruptly and stormed out of the house, leaving Thomas to mutter an apology before running after her. Several months after the disastrous dinner, Thomas and Clara's wedding day arrived. Despite my reservations about Clara, I put on a brave face for my son's sake. The wedding, as I'd been forewarned, was entirely vegetarian. I had never been to a wedding like this before, and neither had most of our family. As I walked into the venue, I couldn't help but feel out of place. The decorations were beautiful, but the atmosphere was unfamiliar. Clara's friends, also vegetarians, mingled amongst themselves, discussing the virtues of their dietary choices. My sister, Martha, leaned over to me and whispered, "Elaine, have you seen the menu? I can't pronounce half of these dishes." I smiled wryly. "Just go with it, Martha. It's Thomas's day." The ceremony was lovely, but the reception was where things got interesting. The array of vegetarian dishes was certainly exotic. My relatives poked at their food with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. During the meal, my brother-in-law, George, a man never known for his tact, called a waiter over. "Excuse me, son, is there any chance we could get a steak or something? Just a small one?" The waiter, trying to remain polite, responded, "I'm sorry, sir. The menu is strictly vegetarian as per the couple's request." George grunted, "Well, I guess it's salad for dinner then." Despite the unfamiliar food, I tried to focus on the positive. Thomas looked genuinely happy, albeit a bit thinner than I remembered. As the evening progressed, I observed Clara. She was the center of attention among her friends, laughing and seeming in her element. Yet, there was an edge to her laughter, a sharpness that made me uneasy. A few days after the wedding, Thomas came to visit me alone. His appearance startled me. He had lost more weight and looked tired. "Thomas, are you all right? You've lost so much weight," I said, concern evident in my voice. He sighed, looking down at his hands. Mom, Clara's been, well, she's put me on a strict vegetarian diet too. Says it's non-negotiable. I was taken aback. But, Thomas, your job is physically demanding. You need a balanced diet. He shrugged helplessly. I know, Mom, but I want to make her happy. It's been hard adjusting. I watched him leave later, feeling a mix of sadness and frustration. Clara's influence over him was more profound than I had feared. My son, once so vibrant and full of life, now seemed a shadow of his former self. After several sleepless nights, filled with worry about Thomas, I decided it was time to take action. I couldn't stand by and watch my son's health deteriorate. With a heavy heart, I picked up the phone to call Clara, Thomas's wife. I hoped that as a doctor, I could express my concerns in a way that would resonate with her. Hello, Clara. It's Elaine, Thomas's mother. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time. I began, my voice as warm and friendly as I could muster. What do you want, Elaine? Clara's voice was cold, distant. I'm calling about Thomas, I said cautiously. I've noticed he's lost quite a bit of weight and seems very tired lately. I'm worried it could be related to his new diet. Clara let out a sigh, audibly annoyed. Look, Elaine, Thomas is perfectly fine. He's just adapting to a healthier way of eating. You're overreacting. I understand your perspective, Clara, but as a doctor, I see signs of nutritional deficiencies in Thomas. He works a physically demanding job, and a strict vegetarian diet without proper planning can lead to health issues. I explained, trying to keep the conversation civil and factual. Elaine, I don't need a lecture on nutrition from you. We've done our research. Thomas is on a balanced vegetarian diet, and that's that. You're not a dietitian, Clara retorted sharply. But Clara, there are certain nutrients that are hard to get from a vegetarian diet alone, especially for someone with Thomas's lifestyle. Perhaps we could work together to find a diet that meets his nutritional needs and aligns with your dietary preferences? I suggested, hoping for a compromise. Clara's voice rose in frustration. I'm not interested in your help, Elaine. Thomas is my husband, and we make our decisions together. You need to respect that and stay out of it. Before I could respond, she hung up. I stared at the phone, feeling a mix of anger and helplessness. Clara's unwillingness to even consider my concerns was alarming. Later that day, my sister, Karen, came over. I shared the distressing phone call with her. Karen, I don't know what to do. Clara just shut me down. She wouldn't even listen to my concerns about Thomas. I shared, my hands trembling slightly. Karen, always a source of practical advice, looked thoughtful. Elaine, it's a tough situation. But maybe Thomas needs to come to this realization on his own. Clara obviously has a strong influence on him. I nodded, knowing she was right, yet feeling uneasy. I just can't sit back and watch Thomas suffer. He's always been a bit too accommodating, and now it's affecting his health. Karen reached across the table, squeezing my hand. I know, Elaine. But sometimes stepping back is the only way they learn. Maybe when Thomas sees the toll it's taking on him, he'll make a change. A few days after my futile conversation with Clara, Thomas came to visit me unexpectedly. It was a cold, gray afternoon, the kind that made you want to stay indoors. When I opened the door, the sight of him took my breath away. He looked nothing like the son I knew. His face was drawn and pale, his eyes lacking their usual spark. But it was the scratches on his face that alarmed me the most. Thomas, what happened to you? I exclaimed, ushering him inside. He avoided my gaze, a sign that he was uncomfortable. It's nothing, Mom, just a little argument with Clara. I led him to the living room, my mind racing with worry. Argument? Thomas, she scratched your face. This is serious. He finally looked at me, his eyes weary.